So this is a review for Cross Country Detours, released in 1940. It's the 280th in the series, and it's directed by Tex Avery. You can find this beautiful new restoration on the Looney Tunes Collector's Choice Volume 2 Blu-ray set, and I'll have a link below to that set. This short is under copyright, so you will not find it on YouTube. The video will just get blocked. But in case you haven't seen it, it's your typical Tex Avery Bobcat cartoon, though this one's definitely one of his best ones, and it just features various nature-related settings and puns. First up, you're going to see is a re-edit of the original commentary I did with my good friend SC McPeter before I had to take that down. And then after that, you'll hear some new thoughts from me breaking down this whole cartoon. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Joining me today is my good friend SC McPeter. Say hi, Mr. McPeter.
Hello, hello. We're here to go watch the longest Looney Tunes ever produced.
But at least it doesn't overstay its welcome. It's one of his best Bobcat cartoons,
Yeah.
I think. I mean, what do you think of that?
I think it's definitely his best Bobcat cartoon. He definitely paid a lot of time on this one, like with like I would say also with Detour in America. Those two are his best Bobcat cartoons.
Doing these commentaries in order, as most people would know, the previous Tex Avery one was the early Worm Gets the Bird. I mean, stereotypes aside, that one was a return back to a narrative for him, but it wasn't a particularly great cartoon, and now we get this one and it's like, whoa, it's like night and day.
Felt that he did these to focus on other cartoons because these ones were quicker to chop out because they had no real story to them. But this one, it feels like he may have been asked, hey, can you try and do one that has a bit more attention paid to it? So he does this one, and it's really good. Like this gag right here, which he'll revisit, it's saying like Red Hot Rangers.
But we're back to Alaska, I should point out, because Tex did a one called The Land of the Midnight Fun, where they went
That one's quite fun.
north. Yeah, I enjoyed that. But here's another thing of the extremes that Tex would do, where it's like,
Just
Paul
this
Bear
very
on a
peeved off bear.
yeah, it doesn't look particularly happy. Probably my
I live
face
in a
of
cold
late.
area myself. I can indeed assure him no matter what, it's always going to be cold somewhere.
But I do like how Tex here sets up a running gag, as he typically would do in a lot of these recent cartoons. With this one,
This
say
one has a fun
California, here we
payoff.
come, and here we see a continuation of the of the wolf. Absolutely
Get along,
great
little
gag.
doggy.
must be pretty
Now-
tired and
now
cold
this-
to get in for the payoff. Here, I believe this is rotoscoped as well. This is
This is the rotoscope of Avery himself that they... And, it definitely seems like with all the rotoscoping, he wanted to really pay attention to the animation to this one. This one might also be one of the first he had Bob McKimson on animating, so that's probably why he was trying to take advantage of such a good animator, and possibly try having the other animators meet his standards, maybe?
Here's a gag that seems to be cut from a lot of showings on TV, with, of course, the suicide gag. And here's a warning that should be in all Tex cartoons.
This lizard was rotoscoped too. It was, I believe, a stripteaser in the area, and you can find footage of it online. It was in a documentary based on the King of Cartoons book. You could find that documentary on Tex Avery Screwball Classics Volume 2 if you're interested.
Yep, and on the Looney Tunes Platinum Collection, if you're lucky enough to have the Blu-ray too, it's on disc 3. But it's great animation. I mean, and I can imagine the boys would have been pretty happy
Eager.
to go the extra mile on this footage, I would think.
I know that with
It's like...
according to Clampett, McKimson didn't actually need any reference for his animation, so probably the strongest animation that isn't rotoscope is probably him.
Now, this is the Hoover Dam, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the Hoover Dam.
Yeah, okay. Yes, there we go.
It
would have been fairly new at the time, yeah?
And it looks like we're getting our little payoff for old Rover here. It's definitely one of his best travelogues in general, one of his best spot gags, and one of his best WB cartoons. You begin to see more of his wild side in this that he would use at MGM, and even some themes that he would use for upcoming cartoons like Red Hot Ranger. So that was the original commentary, and just to note, back then when we did the commentary, this beautiful new restoration was not available, so we did it on the old Laserdisc print,
And one of the things with the original commentaries is that sometimes we went off on tangents, which meant that the cartoon wasn't properly broken down. It is what it is. At least these reviews allow me to go back and elaborate things further. And certainly my guest at the time, SC, is now leaps and pounds better than what he was back then. We should all grow and improve, and SC is no different. But what we'll do is we'll break down this short, and I tell you what, rewatching this short again in this restoration is fantastic. In fact, it even goes one step further, and they found a print with the original titles. And the version with the original titles has the full narration. In the Blue Ribbon reissue, they actually do clip part of the original narration. And speaking of narration, as per Keith Scott's wonderful Cartoon Voices book, it is done by a gentleman by the name of Lou Marcel. And he sounds very familiar to some of the other narrative voices that you hear in these cartoons, right? But in this case, it's Lou Marcel. And when we see the short open, my goodness, this multiplane looking shot, which wasn't done by Multiplane, by the way, but it kind of does, doesn't it? Because Disney had their really expensive multiplane camera set up for zooming in shots and that sort of thing. But in this case, you'd think that the Warner Studio would have had one of those cameras, right? But no, this is amazing, and I dare say almost rivals what was being done at Disney at the time. That's how good this looks. So the first part of it is that we enter Yosemite National Park and we see a well-meaning animal lover, and, well, he sees the sign and he looks around, making sure there's no rangers around, seeing that he's going to be breaking the rule on the sign. As you would expect, in the wild, the animal would be happy to be fed, but this is Tex Avery after all. You already know what the punchline's going to be, which is, "What's the matter, stupid? Can't you read?"
Tempted to feed the tame bears in the park. Listen, stupid! Can't you read?
Avery even did a similar gag in A Day at the Zoo, where someone was trying to feed a monkey, but the monkey ends up beating the crap out of the person trying to feed him. Honestly, I think the gag's funnier here, which to me just shows that Avery's always trying to look to improve on things. It's not to say that the gag in A Day at the Zoo was bad or anything, but it's nice to see that Avery always tries to take things to the next level. So next up, in one of those shots that you've seen in just about every documentary on Tex Avery, we see the quote-unquote shy little deer. Sure, the actual animation is not going to rival Disney. The background certainly will, but the animation won't in cases like this. But you know what? Who cares? It's just interesting when you see the changeover from this rather semi-crudely animated deer. It's not the best shot in the world, but it turns into the rotoscope version of a Mae West type deer. So Mae West was an actor with a very sultry voice. So of course, that's what they're going to use. We even hear the cue, "Oh, you beautiful doll," because what else is Carl Starling going to use, right?
We also find other animals in the park. Here's a shy little deer. Hello, dear.
Hello, big boy.
So we're still in Yosemite, and we bring in the Boy Scouts to the next shot, and we see this slow build-up where you think, okay, this particular Scoutmaster needs to use the toilet, asks if he can use it, okay, and then we see hundreds upon hundreds of little scouts just lined up ready to go, and somehow they're squeezed into this little restroom. Don't ask me how.
What do you suppose he wants?
Pardon me, may we use your washroom?
Okay, bud, right over there.
It's not the best gag in this short, but hey, it's funny enough. And we even get a nice little cap at the end of the tiny little scout going into the tune of Yankee Doodle. But again, probably the weakest gag in this short, but hey, it's funny. I like it enough. And the next shot has so much build-up that it is just one of the funniest things in this short. It's maybe one of my favorite gags. I'm not sure. I mean, this whole short has such wonderful gags, but here we see a forest ranger that may be a caricature. I couldn't identify who this is supposed to be, but maybe a staff member, who knows. But anyway, so you get this build-up, you think it's all serious, that this one idiot out in the forest, he's put down his lit cigar in the forest that could cause a forest fire. We get all this build-up. all this drama of this ranger trying to make sure that the fire isn't going to stop. But no, of course, he just wants that stoogie, right? And as mentioned in the commentary with SC McPeter, you definitely get reminded of Red Hot Rangers, an MGM cartoon that Tex Avery made, which once again, as I pointed out, Avery seems to like to improve on things he's done in the past, and this is no different. It's just between the studios, one with a lower budget, and then of course at a studio with a higher budget, namely the shorts over at MGM. And then we see a quickie joke, which, hey, as a connoisseur of dad jokes I love, we see a natural bridge. And what kind of bridge do we see? We see a bridge from the mouth. Ha ha, right? Although I'm not sure if that's entirely natural because one of the teeth there is gold, but anyway, still pretty good. And we get a nice little contrast. So we've gone from a rather warm environment to a very cold one. And we see that the narrator says that this bear is perfectly content in sub-zero temperatures with all the fat in its body, the fur, and so on, as you would expect from a polar bear, but a polar bear tells differently, saying, "I don't care what you say, I'm cold." Breaking the fourth wall beautifully right there and directly addressing the narrator. Beautiful delivery by Mel Blanc, by the way.
Perfectly contented in his below-zero haunts is the polar bear. For Mother Nature has provided him with layer upon layer of fat, plus a thick coat of heavy fur to keep him good and warm.
I don't care what you say, I'm cold.
And still in this cold environment, we see that Eskimo dogs thrive in this climate. They are perfectly happy to be here, but one apparently isn't, because we see this sign in the foreground saying a few destinations now. Why is the sign here? I don't know. Who cares, right? But it's still pretty funny. So we see he wants to get over to San Francisco. We hear the cue, "California, here I come," and that's pretty much it for this particular bit. So the dog runs off.
What's this fellow up to? Don't tell me he's headed for California. Oh, well, good luck.
And you think that it was going to end there, but this ends up being the start of a running gag, as we'll see all throughout the short, and audiences who would have seen this at the time probably wouldn't have seen a gag like this. So they would have thought that this was, okay, just a simple little gag, but not a setup for something major at the very end. And in another very famous Tex Avery scene, we see the mock drama of a bobcat approaching this trembling baby quail, just like you would see in any nature film of this type. But my goodness, just the animation of the stalking and then the animation afterwards of the bobcat saying, "I can't do it, I just can't do it," sells this perfectly. Just the timing and Mel Blanc's delivery of, "I can't do it." And there's even footage of a live actions reference done by Tex Avery himself, which showed just how much Avery cared about the work he was doing and how much he was involved in each and every one of these shorts.
Only a baby. Poor little...
I can't do it! I can't! I can't go through with it! I can't! I can't!
So after that, we're now at the halfway mark, and yes, as mentioned in the commentary tracks, this is the longest Looney Tunes short. If it's not, it'd be very close because it's nearly 10 minutes long. But thankfully, none of these gags are terrible that should have been cut out. Even if there's a gag that doesn't quite 100% work for me, like that Boy Scout gag before, it's fine. It can stay. That doesn't have to be removed. So we get the bit that I thought was hilarious in the commentary, and I still do think today that it's one of the stupidest puns ever, which I love. And of course, the sounds of the frog, and we get a close-up of a frog croaking. Double meaning, frog, croaking himself. Beautiful. Chef's kiss to that.
There's something fascinating about the sound of a frog. Here we show you a close-up of a frog croaking.
And we even see a sign apologizing to people about the puns used in this short. So yeah, I should probably have one of those at the start of every single review, right? So then we go on to the desert wastes of New Mexico, and we see an interruption. So this is something that audiences at the time would not have really seen much of, if anything. It's like, oh, there's a dog again. Okay, maybe they think it's going to now build up to something. So there you are. So after that little interruption, and we see the scene where the lizard sheds its skin once a year in a very interesting procedure. First of all, the song you hear is It Had to Be You, one of my favorite renditions of the song in Looney Tunes history. Boy, it would have been amazing to see the orchestra play this one live. So the lizard ends up becoming a rotoscoped striptease artist, and the footage of this striptease is actually out there, and I'll have it playing in this review. So once again, it showed that Tex Avery cared, and look, could the animators have gotten away without having the striptease artist doing her thing? Perhaps, but with the exception of the inking department, it was mostly men anyway, so I guess this is an excuse for them, I don't know, but regardless though, it is an amazing bit of animation in terms of the quality of how the rotoscoping was done. Sometimes it can look really weird, sometimes when done like this, it can look really, really amazing. And that plus the music, fantastic.
Let's watch this interesting procedure.
And at the end, we see a self-censorship, of course, because Avery's probably thinking, well, I don't want to go too far. I don't want this bit cut out, because it goes on for nearly a minute. And actually, at the end of that wonderful rendition of It Had to Be You, we hear a beautiful trombone just to cap it all off. Chef's kiss. It's definitely one of Tex Avery's best animated moments ever. So we see a bit of a warning happening when everything fades to black, and this is one of those things where animation at the time, so these particular shorts, they were not made for children. They certainly were not. In fact, that striptease sequence should be evidence enough, but here they outright say this is animations pretty much for everyone. So they'll have a segment for adults on the left, and they'll have a bit for the kids on the right. And we see a resource for the children, and the voice is done by Sarah Berner. But of course, we seem to think that this particular vicious Gila monster on the left is getting more agitated as the recitation goes on and on and on. And can you just imagine what the audiences would have thought at the time seeing this particular scene?
Please. The next scene is quite gruesome. So for the benefit of the children in the audience, we will split the screen. The left side for grown-ups, the right for the children. For the grown-ups, a hideous Gila monster. For the children, a recitation.
Mary had a little lamb. Its fleece was white as snow. And everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to go.
It blows my mind just how many great ideas Tex Avery had for these shorts. And naturally, he's going to break his rule here with having the two split screens where you have this child just then all of a sudden barking at this vicious animal, and the animal runs away yelping like a dog. Mark Kauser has stated that it was Rod Scribner that did this animation, and I certainly couldn't tell. This is before Bob Clamper took over, and Scribner's animation really went off on its own tangent and showing some of the wildest stuff ever done in animation history. Now we are over at the Grand Canyon, and we now have this whole bit where it's all played completely straight, showing the majesty of the Grand Canyon, and once again, it looks absolutely stunning. So we end up seeing a tourist trying to do the whole echo thing, saying, hello, hello, and yet there's even, once again, live action reference of Tex Avery himself doing the action that he wanted to see in this shot, going, hello. But the payoff here is that we hear a telephone operator voice, again by Sarah Berner, and the party does not answer.
Here, from this point, the massive walls of the canyon are able to throw back an echo from a distance of 3 miles. Let's listen to this tourist.
Hello! Hello!
It's fantastic. I mean, people these days watching this probably wouldn't get the fact that back then there were telephone operators, and these days they no longer exist because they have automatic switches when it comes to calling people, but hey, pretty funny. We once again see the running dog gag again. Usually you would have a payoff by the third one in the whole rule of three thing, but in this case, no, there's no payoff yet. It just keeps on going, and I'm guessing Tex Avery is just trying to test the limits here. So the narrator goes on about the winding Colorado River, home to busy little beavers who are building a dam. I confirm that yes, beavers actually are in the Colorado River system. I honestly didn't know. And no, it's not because I think beavers are only in Canada or anything, but I genuinely wanted to know because a lot of these animation studios seem to think that penguins exist in the North Pole when penguins do not exist above the equator. They're only in the South. But anyway, that's another thing entirely. And we see a very, very quick scene of them building a dam, which appears to be the Hoover Dam. And that dam was seen as a feat of infrastructure. It was built between 1931 to 1936, so it was fairly new at the time this short was actually made. And it's definitely something that's perfect for this particular gag.
The Colorado River, winding its way endlessly through mountain gorges, presents a remarkable view from the edge of the canyon high above. On crossing the river, we stop to watch a group of busy little beavers industriously at work building a dam.
And now we get a payoff to this dog who is exhausted after running literally thousands of miles. And even here, the rendition of California Here I Come, that rendition sounds rather exhausted by this point.
Well, our four-legged friend warily approaches his goal. What determination.
But then we see the state line, which, yes, it's an arbitrary line, but then all of a sudden the vegetation completely changes from one state to another, which is kind of weird. It's one of those blink and you miss it gags in this one. So the dog goes through all these cities, and yes, including Hollywood, in a bit of a little wink, wink, nudge, nudge thing. And you think, well, why does this dog want to go to California? Of course, it's for the Californian red trees. Of course, and he's so happy. So all of that build-up just to end on a piss gag at the very end. Very Tex Avery. Wow. Revisiting this one, especially in this new restoration, first of all, it looks amazing, and how Avery was able to get so much out of a smaller budget than he would get over at MGM once he heads over there is just amazing. The animators carry a lot of the film as well. Had he had weaker animators, I don't think a lot of the punchlines would have worked nearly as well. He had Mel Blanc doing all these wonderful voices, Sarah Burner too with the whole recitation, although it's really Mel Blanc that does the majority of voices here, save for the narrator, who also does an amazing job. He pretty much plays it straight the entire way through, and that's the only way such a short could work in my book. This one gets 9 out of 10. It's one of Tex Avery's finest. It's maybe not my favorite of his spot gag shorts, but it is definitely one of the Tex Avery's best. And after doing so many spot gag shorts that varied in quality, I think this is pretty much a return to form for him. But that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and until next time, take care.
Thousands and thousands of trees, and they're mine, all mine!